Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, December 9th, 2025 meeting of Charter and Rules. It is 6:30 p.m. This meeting is taking place in City Hall Chambers and is also available on Zoom and also on Channel 15. And I want to name that I am joined today by committee members, Councillor Vacan and Council President and Councillor Tessa Murphy-Armaletti on Zoom. Myself, Meg McGrath-Smith, I'm in Chambers. And I'll start by making a motion to take a roll call vote that for the purposes of this meeting, that would be applicable to all motions to remove an item from the table, place items on the table, package items, or suspend the rules unless there is an objection.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And sorry, roll call. Councillor Vacan?
Yes.
Tessa Murphy-Armaletti?
Yes.
McGrath-Smith? Yes. Okay, welcome.
I'll make a motion to take up item 1 and 3 together as a package.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So item 1 was filed back in March, ordered that Charter and Rules holistically review and reorganize how information on subcommittees is presented in the rules for the sake of clarity in Section 9. And then item 3, which was filed in November, ordered that the roles and responsibilities given to different subcommittees in the rules be revised for clarity, purpose, and functionality. The reason why the second one was filed was that when the first one came up and we discussed it initially in April and then in October, it became clear that it wasn't just a matter of reorganization, that there may also be some changes that we want to be able to name, or we want to remove information that's not valid, or reorganize responsibilities to different committees. And so I created a second one that would allow us to actually make those changes if the committee was so interested in doing. So some of them since then we've actually changed. So we've taken up what was public service and human resources, and we did that work already, which was great. And I think today the goal for me is to go through the proposed draft and talk about if it's working, if it's not working. Jeffrey, is it possible to bring that up on the screen? And then discuss also some questions that I had, particularly around some of the subcommittees, particularly DGR. I had some questions around that. So let's start. And I'm not sure, I hope that the members of the committee have been able to look at the proposed draft. The current section 9 is on the left, and the proposed draft of the revised section is on the right. Effectively, what I attempted to do was take all of the information and group it together, because what we had was certain committees would find what they were asked to do or tasked to do in multiple places. So the goal was to pull together a new section A, which is on all the cremation of the committees, taking all of that and putting it together. B, taking all the info on rules on voting, meeting, reporting, and membership and putting those together. And then having a section on the standing committees where each of them was named, and then everything that was named elsewhere in 9 was pulled in underneath just that committee, just to streamline it and make it more clear. But I'd open it up to hear from other members of the committee whether or not you think this improves it, or whether or not there are parts that are missed in doing so or that need to be revised. Councillor Vacan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I took a look at it. I'm not sure if I cross-referenced every single item because everything's numbered differently.
Yes.
But it appeared to me that the content was all there, just in different locations from what I could see.
Yes, nothing was removed and nothing was changed. Other than, if you look under BA, I dropped one line that was there because it referred to full council votes instead of committees, and it referred to 2/3 votes.
Right.
And I had asked our solicitor for clarification on if there were any 2/3 votes that came out of subcommittees. And the answer was no. And so it didn't seem to make sense to keep it in there because there are no 2/3 votes. We had just copied what's earlier in the rules underneath the first section of council down into subcommittees. And so that was the only line that I removed, only because I didn't think it was applicable to the subcommittees, unless in your experience you've seen a 2/3 vote. I couldn't come up with any examples in Robert's rules.
I haven't seen one in subcommittees, but it looked like in the rules there had just been a bit of a merging of subcommittees and the full council, but you're saying it's still in the section for the full council?
Yes. Yeah, it was a repeated rule. It appeared in both places.
Yeah, so from what I could see, I have no problem with changing the flow of the information. I think that's fine.
Okay, I see. Thank you. And I see Councillor Murphy-Ramboletti's hand. Also, thank you. I want to recognize Councillor Devine is also on Zoom.
Thank you. No, I would just echo what Councilor Bacon said. Overall, I think it helps. It's reminiscent of the initial changes that we had made a few years ago when Councilor Maldonado Velez sort of put things into a different order. So, but like Councilor Bacon was saying, I was trying to go through both and make sure I didn't miss anything. So I just appreciated that clarification. But I agree. I think it just helps for ease of navigation. I think it makes a lot of sense. That's all.
Thank you. I want to recognize that Councillor Ocasio has joined us in chambers. You've braved the cold. It's cold out there. Sinai, could we look at the DGR section really quick? I just had some questions about that. So underneath the DGR committee, it talks about the Office of Industrial Affairs. And I wondered if that was referring to HEDIC, to the Holyoke Redevelopment Authority. I wasn't sure what the Office of Industrial Affairs referred to, if that was old language that we should revise. That was a question I had. And yes, I see Councillor Murphy-Ramboletti's hand.
Thank you. My understanding just from several years ago, I do believe that Industrial Affairs was referring to HEDIC. And that was just like from my conversations with former Councilor McGivern when I was getting the rundown, prepping to be chair of DGR. So I think that was it. Others, I'm sure, who were here before me might know more than me, but that was always my understanding. So I don't know if it's necessary to call it that. It could just be like, it could just refer to that sort of economic development realm in general. I don't feel strongly about keeping it, but yeah, that's all I knew.
Okay. Jeffrey, could you scroll down to page 4 underneath where it says the DGR section? I'm wondering if it makes sense, because we don't have an Office of Industrial Affairs, if we should say something just about industrial affairs, or if we should actually name HEDIC and the HRA. Is there any thoughts on that from the committee?
Okay with that? I mean, you mean to like just keep it more general, is what you're saying?
We could just replace the office of. We could reduce that and just say, the Office of Community Development, Industrial Affairs, and any matter. I don't even know if the Office of Industrial Affairs is needed, actually, now that I'm saying that. We could remove it and just say the Office of Community Development and any matters related to the housing or community economic or industrial development. It's already named in there. Councillor Bacon?
I think to take out the Office of Industrial Affairs doesn't harm the jurisdiction or the meaning of the charge of the committee.
Yeah, I agree, especially because it's in there later.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe...
I would agree.
Okay, so I'm going to remove that so that it just says the Office of Community Development and any matters. And then my next question is, it says in there that the DGR serves as the Legislative Affairs Committee, and they shall organize twice annually a presentation and Q&A session with our state legislative delegation to be held at a meeting of the full city council. And so I thought it was only annually. I don't, but again, it could be that I'm missing something that used to happen and maybe we should bring it back. But because I think it only happened once last year, and I think it happened in committee, not at the full council. And so I didn't know if we wanted to change that. Yes, Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti.
Yeah, I think there have been years where it's been twice a year, and sometimes it hasn't, but you are correct. I think my memory does not recall having it be at the full council. I think we used the committee as the opportunity to have that conversation and invite the delegation in. So if you wanted to clean it up, I think that would make sense. But there have been years where they've come in more than once, though, if I remember correctly.
Okay. So are you suggesting that we keep twice but remove the line, this phrase after delegation?
I mean, I guess I don't feel strongly either way, but I think I don't think we'd want to limit ourselves to say annually, just in case, that's just me. It's whatever the will of the body is, but yeah, I think it makes sense to clean that up so that it's clear. They usually come before a subcommittee meeting.
Okay. Councilor Bacon?
I agree with both things. I think it's good to keep the twice because I think it's good to keep them connected to the city.
Okay.
But I agree, I don't believe I'm not saying they've never come to a full council meeting or they wouldn't, but this particular report or back and forth has always occurred in committee to my recollection.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think that helps. Okay, so I'll remove the line after delegation, but keep twice. Okay, another question that I had for the Charter and Rules Committee is, where do ballot questions fall? Because ballot questions have been going to Charter and Rules, but I think also sometimes have gone elsewhere. And I wasn't sure if we wanted to specify it, because currently it doesn't live anywhere. Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti?
I think it makes sense to send ballot questions to Charter and Rules if it's gonna impact the charter. If it's like, usually one would assume that it could be a non-binding ballot question, but I feel like that just seems logical to have that stuff be in Charter and Rules, but yeah, that's an interesting point. I don't know if...
Or we could leave it unstated like it currently is, and then as they come up, we decide where. I just wasn't sure if we wanted to put guidance in. Someone had said to me at one point, ballot questions always go to Charter and Rules. But I wasn't sure if that was just precedent, or I initially was surprised then to see it not in the rules as something that Charter and Rules had jurisdiction over.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, I don't feel strongly either way, but if it's one of those things that, like, if it helps to identify it, then I guess it makes sense. But at the same time, recognizing that we can always suspend the rules and send it wherever we want anyway. So I'd be curious what others thought. I don't feel too strongly one way or the other.
Mm-hmm. Councilor Bacon?
So I think, ballot questions have recently come up a little bit more often than they had in the past. So I can see why it's getting a little bit more attention. But I think it's okay to leave it open. Mm-hmm. Because if it does affect the charter, then it definitely should go to Charter and Rules. But maybe someday we would want a ballot question on, I don't know, some sort of a public safety issue. And then would it need to go to charter and rules? I don't know.
Right. Okay.
But either,
Yeah.
I don't have strong feeling about it one way or the other.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to leave it unstated and we just decide as a body where to send it. It was more just a wondering. Okay. I have one other question actually. If we could go back up under B to F, BF. There was one line in here that I wasn't sure what it meant or if we needed to do it. So F, it says, no council committee shall take any action on any business referred to that committee by the full council unless the committee has in writing a city council order, petition, letter, or communication referring to the subject to be studied by the committee, and no report shall be received from any committee unless agreed to in committee actually assembled, and all reports shall be in writing. And my question was, what do we mean by all reports shall be in writing? What satisfies that? I see Councillor Devine's hand up.
Yes, thank you. That was my question exactly. If we're in a committee meeting and we settle something, the order's been taken up and it's been approved, who's putting it in writing? That should just go to the full council.
Often what I have experienced is that the chair then is giving the committee report at the next council meeting, but that's normally a verbal report.
Right.
It's not in writing. And so I wasn't sure exactly what we meant by all reports shall be in writing. And so that was a wonder for me in terms of if it made sense to keep it as a rule, unless it was naming something that I'm not aware of. Like, is that when we sign the papers on the table? Is that what that's referring to? Is that satisfying that rule? I see Councillor Bacon's hand up and then Murphy Ramboletti.
So this would be most important for ordinance, which is making legal changes for which there has to be a written legal form
Okay.
that would be a part of that report, because otherwise it wouldn't be able to be acted upon. So I'm not sure how critical it would be for the other committees, but I think the other thing that does accomplish that, which we had not been doing for a long time, but now we have been doing it for a number of years, are the minutes of the meetings. Because that is reducing the actions of the meeting to writing, which I think is a good thing.
Yep. So maybe the reports is referring to the minutes, but also maybe referring to the legal form required for ordinances.
Yeah, but I think in all cases, both things are good. But I think the minutes would certainly meet the requirement for a report being in writing.
Okay. Murphy Ramboletti and then Devine.
Thank you. That's actually exactly what I was thinking. The only thing, even when I read that rule, like as a new counselor, I was like, I've never seen any of these reports actually be in writing. But then minutes makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if that's like just sort of something to, maybe it's adding in that specific language about like minutes, or if it's related to an ordinance change. But I always wondered, I'm sure at some point in time that was probably common practice to provide a report in writing perhaps, but I do think the minutes make a lot of sense in doing that, or having that be what gets reflected for the record. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how necessary. I feel like keeping it is probably okay, but I'm not sure. My thing is just like, as long as like chairs are all ready to give a report and a thorough report, like I think that's the most important thing, because folks want to know obviously what happened at the meeting. So for me, I care more about chairs giving a good report than what it looks like in the rules.
Yes, and I also wonder how old that rule is, and I mean, right now, especially because meetings are recorded, there's this immediate record. And of course we also have minutes. So I do wonder if, there'd ever be a world where we would want to have written reports from coming out of committee meetings. So maybe at some point we will want to look at revising that around, specifying, legal form is specified elsewhere. That's specified in a bunch of different ways underneath the ordinance section.
That was another thing I was going to say. Thank you.
And then legal form is also specified a second time. It appears twice. So even in the set of the way that I reorganized it, I didn't remove it. I just kept it doubled. So it's underneath ordinance, but it's also here as G, where it talks about legal form has to be provided. And so that's in there twice. But I do think, maybe at some point we just name that a verbal report is required at the next full council meeting by the chair or designee, and that minutes is also required. Councilor Devine?
Yes, thank you. I agree. I don't know why it's in there. I can't even imagine. I can only speak for myself with finance, is we go through a lot of grants, we go through a lot of different things, and I'm constantly taking notes. And in fact, I tape the meetings just to make sure I get those notes correct, because it's always moving fast. But to turn around and say, now you have to put it in writing, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that is going to hold up every chair to do that. I've never, ever seen something like that, that everybody had to put it in writing. I understand if you wanted a legal opinion or put it in legal form for the ordinance committee, but all the others to reduce it to writing I don't think is a good idea, just my opinion, because I can't even imagine what it would be. It's bad enough trying to give a report, give it correct, and then all of a sudden I have to stop and put it in writing as well. And who do I hand that to? Does that get handed to somebody? I think the minutes take care of itself, and that's, I think, where we should leave it, except for the ordinance committee. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that we probably should remove "and all reports shall be in writing." And I guess my proposed language, I typed it into my document, Jeffrey, but it seems to be a different one than you have up there. Says a verbal committee report will be given by the chair or their designee at the next full council meeting where it appears on the agenda. All committee meeting minutes must be completed and shared to the full council. Yes, Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. I wouldn't like to see the written report part eliminated, but how about if we clarified that minutes suffice as the written report?
Okay.
Meeting minutes, that all reports shall be in writing and minutes of the meeting shall meet this requirement, perhaps? I'm not looking to give a chair of a committee more things to do. Would that work if we say it that way?
So keep "and all reports shall be in writing," and then in like parentheses,
Yeah.
minutes of the meeting meets this requirement.
Yes.
Okay. I see Councilor Devine's hand up.
I'm trying to think what you're saying is that all reports shall be in writing. Are those reports the minutes of the meeting? Because if it is, then you don't need "all reports shall be in writing." The word "shall" is pretty important there. And I just think that we can say, well, we don't mean that the chair should write a report, but once you put that word "shall" in there and all reports shall be written, I don't know, I think you should just keep minutes shall be kept of every meeting.
And minutes shall be shared to full council. And minutes of all committee meetings will be shared to full council. Would that work, Counselor Bacon?
Do you want to reframe that again?
Sorry, yes. And minutes of all subcommittee meetings will be shared to full council? Counselor Devine, is your hand up again, or is it
You
left up?
looking, are
No,
you
it's up
looking,
again.
so you're looking to keep all of that there like that?
It sounds like I heard what you had said, and I also heard what Counselor Devine had said. And so what she's suggesting is that we have any committee, unless agreed to, in committee actually assembled, and minutes of all committee meetings will be shared to full council. So instead of saying reports, specifying that we mean minutes.
Madam Chair, I think you should take out the words, "and all reports shall be in writing."
Yes. Jeffrey, do you want me to send this to you?
Well, I'm editing on screen, so I'll just make the changes as you ask me to do so.
Okay.
And so you're saying, and reflected in the minutes of the subcommittee that shall be shared to the full city council, that would do it.
Jeffrey, I just emailed it to you so that you have the last line.
One moment.
And it may be that you have it. It's so tiny on the screen over there that I'm not necessarily seeing it. Yeah, I think you have it. So the only change is just after the comma, and minutes of all committee meetings will be shared to full council.
Did that inadvertently change the letter? Did something happen there?
I think it dropped a letter. Yeah, it somehow became,
Okay, so it's supposed to be F, right?
yeah. Solicitor Bissonnette, I see you've come off of your screen. Does that mean that you have a thought?
Well, good evening. Thank you for recognizing me. I want to point out some language that has troubled me in what's now been labeled F for a while. No report shall be received from any committee unless agreed to in committee actually assembled. What would you think the words "unless agreed to" mean in this context? Because it doesn't make any provision for a minority report, nor does it make clear what agreed to means. Does it mean all of the members? What if there's a difference of opinion? Does it then can't be reported out? So that might be an area for some clarification. And I would also, Jeffrey, suggest that minutes of all committee meetings shall be taken and will be shared to the full council. And I think if you add the "shall be taken" after meetings, I think that will clarify that a little cleaner.
Okay, thank you. Jeffrey, could you add that in? I think that's an interesting question that you've raised, Solicitor Bissonnette. I definitely want to sit with it and think about what that might look like to take that on and clarify it. Because I think you're right. It's not necessarily clear. There's a place, of course, in the ordinance rules where it specifies, what does it mean to have a minority report, how to ask for it, how to be able to share it. And I think maybe it's referring to that in some way. I think it may also be referred to the way that people either sign off on orders at the table or don't. And I wonder about its applications or how it's been used in the past. But I don't have clarity yet on exactly what we would change it to. Counselor Bacon, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I do think it's an interesting question, but we do have the section on voting, which talks about a majority to move something forward, either affirmatively or negatively, and that if there's a tie, it doesn't move at all. And so I would interpret those words in this context to mean in the context of the larger rules. Do you know, so that on occasion, a committee has recommended things with no recommendation, right? But the committee agreed to do that. In those instances, we've had those happen where there, in essence, is no recommendation, right? But a report is still made.
Yes.
So, you know, I think there's a variety of ways reports can come out of a committee, but there, I do think, has to be agreement of majority of the committee. Otherwise, it would stay in committee, right?
Right. So one thought we could have actually to maybe clarify that based on what you've said is we could just add unless agreed to by a majority in committee.
Yeah. But you can say that, but just remember, if a committee member changes their mind between one meeting and the city council meeting and chooses not to sign the jacket, then it will not be represented as agreement of the committee. I've seen that happen.
Yeah, I do actually have a standing question on that practice and where it came from, because it feels like it's an older practice where things would have already been in writing, and right now they're often not, right? We're verbally discussing things, or we're looking at documents that might be electronic, and then the order is then generated afterwards, and then we sign it at the next council meeting before. So to members of the public who may be watching, I gotten a number of questions around what are you all doing at the table right before the meeting? Because if anyone comes in, they're seeing that there's all of these papers down the table and people are signing them. And it strikes me as an interesting practice where effectively, I think you're supposed to be affirming that that vote that happened at that meeting is what happened at that meeting, and that in the old days, I'm guessing, that would have been like signed at the table before you left the subcommittee meeting, and that was the record. But instead, it's become this thing that, I don't know, like it's now it becomes like, oh, I've decided I don't want to move it forward afterwards. I've seen that happen. And I don't know exactly where that lives in our rules or in our ordinances, or if those are just practices that are set by precedent.
Well, I know it was a precedent when I came on the council, but I don't know about the specific reference.
Yeah. Counselor Devine?
Yeah, let me, please, I'm almost begging you to take out those words, a majority in committee.
Okay.
That agreed to. And what you talk about in writing a city council order, petition, letter, or communication referring to the subject shall be studied by the committee. I don't know what we're studying. I thought it would be like taken up by the committee, and no report shall be received from any committee unless agreed to by a majority of the committee. Personally, I think that's not a good idea. And the
Can you
minutes,
say, would you mind saying why?
because you're asking for a majority of the committee. If you have 3 people on the committee, or let's say 4, and it's a 2-2, that's a no vote. And
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yep.
To me,
Because it doesn't match our rules in other places.
right, I
Yes.
just think that should be taken out. My opinion, a majority of the committee,
Well,
I don't know.
maybe we leave it as is for now and just have to sit on what it means and its applications, because I don't have clarity in my mind around what to do with that language, and I don't want to, have a knee-jerk reaction and then, create a problem.
I think you are creating a problem by saying a majority of the committee. And we're also going to be having new committees come January when other people are sworn in. I mean, you can do what you want to do, but I think that's going to create a problem.
Well, my proposal is that we just get rid of that and go back to the old language.
I agree.
And just consider what the applications are and come back to it. I think it says I have 2 hands up. Sorry. All right, Councillor Bacon.
I'm okay with taking out unless it's a majority of the committee, but as a practical matter, that is when things generally are moved out of committee. But as we had talked about a little bit earlier, sometimes committees decide to move something forward without a recommendation. So
Okay.
that would sort of make an argument against anybody agreeing because they didn't decide on anything. But I mean, that would be another discussion. Should a committee send something forward without a recommendation if the whole reason it was sent there was to ask the committee to make one? Yes. And that's been a relatively new practice too, that committees say, oh, well, we don't want to make a recommendation. We'll just send it up with no recommendation. That's been happening more often than it ever used to happen too. So that's been sort of a new development. So those are interesting things to talk about further, but I think as a practical matter, the committees are still working okay because you have to have a majority present to have the meeting. The only problem saying a majority voting would cause is, as an example, we had an ordinance committee meeting the other night. There were only 3 people present. A recommendation is coming to city council on a 2-1 vote. So that is not a recommendation of the majority of the committee,
Right.
but it is the majority of those present. So it met the rule.
Right.
So I think putting it in does create complications.
Well, maybe we'll leave it with the original language for now, and we can move this to the full council in the way that we've reorganized it, which I think was in the spirit of what this order was. And someone could always put in an order to come back to this if they wanted to later.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we recommend this to the city council as amended tonight.
Second?
Oh, Councillor Anderson Burgos has joined us. Councillor, did you want to weigh in before we voted? We were just about to move this item to council.
Yeah, I just had a thought. I want to say that when we're talking about majority, supermajority, whatever, I think what we need to realize is that the members of the city council were greater than. I think that's the problem we're having, trying to do all the math. That's just a thought I had, because if the numbers are greater, then majority changes, if you know what I mean. I just wanted to add that. And another thing I wanted to add, when you brought up a good point. When I first started city council and I would sign, I always felt odd signing something because it was something that I disagreed with. And one of the councilors just said, oh no, we just sign. And I'm like, I always found it weird. I'm like, but I didn't agree with this order. I don't agree with what was discussed and whatever. And I didn't want to, I was hesitant to sign. So some clarification on why that is the way it is that's some good conversation to have for sure. Thank you.
Yes, and I think it'd be interesting to come back to it too. Okay, thank you, Councillor Anderson Burgos. So we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Councillor Anderson Burgos, is your hand up again, or is it still up? Okay, and I see our city council assistant, your hand.
Yeah, I just want one clarifying question. So the language that just got suggested to change, where the subcommittee minutes are shared with the council. Is this now requesting that they be added to the communications just as other commissions and boards are shared as communications to the council?
That's a good question. Does anyone on the body or anyone on the committee want to name their understanding of that? I did not. From my perspective, it was if it's shared in the subcommittee, it is then available to anyone from council. Unless
Yeah,
someone
that
really
was-
does want them to go as communication line items.
That was my understanding as well, Madam Chair.
Jeffrey, do you believe that we have to change the language there in order to make that clear?
No, I think what you say here makes it clear what your intent is.
Okay.
And the minutes are posted on the website too, right?
Yes.
So they're available.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, then we'll do a roll call vote. Councillor Bacon,
Yes?
Councillor Murphy-Ramboletti,
Yes.
Councillor McGrath-Smith, yes. All right. We're going to go back to item 2.
Motion to take up item 2.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Ordered that City Council Rule 9I be revised, which is the one that says subcommittees should not be allowed to meet at the same time / same night. And then the proposed new rule, we'd sort of thought it was in a good spot and then got sent back here because there were enough concerns and questions about it that it just made sense to move it back to make sure it was in the right place before we moved it back to full council. So the proposed rule was subcommittees should not be allowed to meet at the same time or same night unless previously approved by a vote of the full council. If a joint committee comprises a majority of the full council, then the council can call a committee of the whole. And I think the suggestion, if I'm remembering correctly, in the council meeting is that we had to name that it was a majority vote of the full council, that it was unclear the threshold of that vote in order to approve the meeting. Were there any other questions that folks remember being brought up or that folks want to name here with this before we send it back to council? Okay, hearing none. Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, Councillor Bacon?
I was just going to say, I agree that I think that was part of the question. And so I was going to offer an amendment to add majority vote of the full council.
Okay, so a motion has been made to amend the proposed rule change by adding a majority before vote.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any other concerns that folks remember being brought up in the council meeting that we have to address?
I don't think so. Of course, I think the folks who had
Yeah.
concerns aren't
Not
here.
here. Yeah, I agree.
So, I was also trying to remember what other concerns there were. So I thought it was good the first time around, but
Well, so
I think this does help clarify though. So I think hopefully that was it.
I think it was a conversation at the time around what is a committee of the whole. So Solicitor Bissonnette, I think this came from you. So I'll hold you responsible for having this sent back here to committee. Can you give us a brief and brilliant of what is the committee of the whole and when it might be used and why?
The committee of the whole is used by other legislative bodies when there's a matter so significant that the full council wants to consider it and have a hearing, take testimony, get some opinions, have public input. That normally couldn't happen during a regular city council meeting. Others use it as a committee of the whole for when you do your budget deliberations. You could be the committee of the whole. In this case, what spurred me to think of it was the issue of possibly violating the open meeting law with a joint committee, as we saw. It was ordinance and charter and rules. And so you ended up with 8 members. That could be a majority of the city council. And of course, you're deliberating in that joint committee as well. So that could be construed as a deliberation by at least a quorum of the council, which if you couldn't do in private, you shouldn't do in public. So that would be my thought, as to giving you a different way to accomplish the same thing. If you had, and that might have been one of the better ones to sort of work out and haggle on the Municipal Modernization Act. But this just gives the council another opportunity to set up a body to hear something important. Those are my thoughts on it.
Thank you. If there's any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to move this to council.
I'll make a motion to approve it as amended.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right.
I think we have to do a roll call just to be precise.
Oh, I think you're right. Okay, Counselor Bacon,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy-Ramboletti,
Yes.
Counselor McGrath-Smith, yes. Okay. Would it make sense to take up 4 and 5 as a package?
Oh, okay, I'll make a
take them-
motion to take up items 4 and 5 as a package.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So these are 2 items from Counselor Jordan that he would like to see added to as a new rules underneath Section 8. And the first order, my apologies, put them in front of me, is Rule 8B amended by adding a new Rule 8P, which says, in case of the failure of the mayor to transmit to the city council a written recommendation for an appropriation for any purpose not included in the annual budget, which is deemed necessary by the council after having been so requested by vote thereof, said council, after the expiration of 7 days from such vote, upon its own initiative, may make such appropriation by a vote of at least 2/3 of its members, and shall in all cases clearly specify the amount to be expended for each particular purpose. But no appropriation may be voted hereunder so as to fix specific salaries of employees under the direction of boards elected by the people other than the city council. And the annual budget shall include sums sufficient to pay the salaries of officers and employees fixed by law or by ordinance. Notwithstanding any contrary provision of any city charter, no ordinance providing for an increase in the salaries or wages of municipal officers or employees shall be enacted except by a 2/3 vote of the city council, nor unless it is to be operative for more than 3 months during the calendar year in which it is passed. No new position shall be created or increase in rate made by ordinance, vote, or appointment during the financial year subsequent to the submission of the annual budget, unless provision therefore has been made by means of a supplemental appropriation. No ordinance, vote, or appointment creating a new position in any year in which a municipal election is held shall be valid and effective unless said ordinance, vote, or appointment is operative for more than 3 months during said municipal year. And then 5 is to amend Rule 8 by adding a new Rule 8O as follows. No sum appropriated for a specific purpose shall be expended for any other purpose, and no expenditure shall be made nor liabilities incurred by or in behalf of the city until an appropriation has been fully voted by the city council, sufficient to meet such expenditure or liability, together with all prior unpaid liabilities which are payable out of such appropriation, except in accordance with the recommendation of the mayor to the city council, approved by the yea or nay votes of 2/3 of the council. Provided, however, that after the expiration of the financial year and until the passage of the annual appropriations, liabilities payable out of the regular appropriation to be contained therein may be incurred to an amount not exceeding 1/3 of the total of such appropriation for the preceding year. Every bill, payroll, or other voucher covering an expenditure of money shall be approved by the signatures on the back of such bill or voucher of the majority, or payrolls or vouchers shall be turned over to the auditor. The financial year shall begin with the first day of July in each year. The provisions of this section shall apply throughout the entirety of the financial year. So Councilor Jardine could not be here with us tonight. He did write, if you could please read the following when the two items are discussed, I would appreciate it. I will not be able to attend the meeting tonight. However, as I discussed with you previously, the point of items 4 and 5 on the agenda is to bring important sections of state law and the charter to the attention of counselors so they understand their powers as counselors. In the past, we've brought in key provisions of state rules or the charter into the council rules for education and awareness purposes. Many counselors may not be otherwise aware of these items. Even if they are not brought into the rules, these rules still apply, but it is more about raising awareness and serving as a tool for counselors, which is an important function of our council rules. I think the council would be wise to incorporate them into the rules, but if it does not want to, that is fine too. Regards, Kevin Jordan. So I will open it up to the committee. Is there anyone who wants to discuss either of these orders or ask any questions of our solicitor? I see Councilor Bacon's hand and then Councilor Devine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my perspective on this is we have probably a greater number of newer counselors on the council than when I joined it. There was, for a lot of years, a lot of senior people on it. And so there was a lot of institutional memory. And I'm not saying that memory was always perfect, but there was a lot of, I guess, historical knowledge in the room, and so many people that had served in various and many different positions on the council that there were just a lot of people that had a lot of experience. Now we have generally a newer council, and it seems like we have perhaps even more ordinances and certainly have had much more debate about the meaning of things in the charter and the like than we've had in the past. And so I think it's helpful to document, say in this instance, some of the state laws that might pertain to things that come up for counselors that might not otherwise be aware of it, or might have to go do a lot of research to find out about it if a certain issue comes up. So I guess for those reasons, I think it might be helpful to put some of the state law information into our rules. However, I do think it's the kind of thing that could get to be too much at a certain point too, because if the rules become as complicated and long as our ordinances, well, you know, we run into a different sort of trouble. But I do think the intention here is good, and a lot of the language around finance is quite complicated. And so if there are things that would be helpful to counselors, then I think it's a good thing to put it in. I'm probably mixing and matching pros and cons here a bit. But in general, I feel that more information is better than less for people to have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Councilor Devine.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we're probably going to have to ask Councilor Bissonnette for an opinion, because right now what I feel, I read this and I'm trying not to get upset, because I do think some of this language is a violation of collective bargaining agreements. And I think when we have this type of language, now we're making appropriations. We've never made appropriations before. That's the executive branch. And I think it would leave us open to an unfair labor practice by the unions if the city council appropriated this kind of money. I read this and I just think, this is the mayor's job, not ours. And I do worry about collective bargaining. And I would ask Councilor Bissonnette if he could ring in, if you don't mind, Councilor Chairman. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, Solicitor Bissonnette, do you mind responding to Councilor Devine's question?
Certainly, I would share a concern that there are some collective bargaining issues that are subtext to this. I also want to note that my view is that this comes out of a recent argument before the council about the appropriate use of a state law changing the modicum of votes needed to pass a transfer in the final 2 months of the fiscal year in May and June, and also the first 2 weeks of the following fiscal year for the purposes of closing the books. My reading of this offered by Mr. Jourdain is that the last sentence of his proposal, saying that it would apply throughout the entirety of the financial year, is simply a means to place the activities outside of the state statute for those last 2 months. I think that's his intent. The rest of the language is somewhat consistent with other provisions already existing in state law, and they, whether we set them out in the City Council of Holyoke rules or not, they're still state law, and our auditor and the body is required to follow them.
Thank you, Counselor. I think I agree with your interpretation. I will also say I really appreciate what Counselor Bacon said about, I totally agree as an educator, more information is better. But I also feel like the language as it's written here, is written by Counselor Jourdain, who has an extensive legal background. And I think that in some ways, is a bit of a disadvantage for folks who are looking at it, trying to understand how to apply it, because it's very dense. And so I wonder if it might make sense to try to read through each of these and almost distill it down to something that would be easier for counselors to understand and be able to more readily apply, versus kind of wading into then, arguments over syntax and what certain lines might mean or how they might interact with each other. They're very dense and legal. And I think Councilor Jourdain has gone through already these references. Some cases they're directly from state law, and other places it's referring to a few sections or places. But I wonder if it might behoove us, if we want to look at these, to almost draft them closer to plain speaking. Because I think the value in our rules often is that they are written to be as clear as possible so they can be applied by every counselor and understood by every counselor who comes on board. It's clearly such an important part that we even name how new counselors will get the rules, that they will be shared with new counselors and approved by new counselors. So I fear adopting rules that are so dense that they may be really hard to understand and apply. Counselor Bacon?
Thank you. I'd like to offer a motion to table so that we can look at these more thoroughly and see how they line up. I thought some of this we had already clarified in our ordinances, but if we table it and take a little deeper look at it in committee, we can see if it. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. I think it was good that we talked it out a little bit and looked at it, but I do think that we'll have to sit with it and come back to it. Any discussion?
No discussion.
Actually, we can't discussion on table. Okay. All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I think that is it for our agenda
Motion to
tonight.
take up item 5.
Second?
Oh, I thought we had taken up 4 and 5 together.
6. I misspoke. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Item 6 is from Counselor Bartley. The City of Holyoke applied to the legislature for a home rule petition that allows the city to expand the use of MGL Chapter 40, Section 22A, which grants authority to municipalities to designate a parking space at City Hall for veterans. If the petition is granted, the city could create a local ordinance that would designate parking for veterans at the municipal buildings other than City Hall. And then this is referred to Charter and Rules and copied to Parking Advisory Committee. This has already been taken up in ordinance, so this is our way of taking it up on the charter side. Councilor Bacon.
Thank you. I would just like to share for the committee's consideration that I did receive a call from a former counselor, Peter Tallman, in support of this.
Great.
And when we spoke about it, one of the areas that came to mind, and I'm not sure, how many people would take advantage of this or not, was as an example, the senior center as a possibility. So
Yep.
I don't see it as a
a good idea.
controversial thing particularly. So I see no harm in recommending it to move forward. I don't know if at the state level they'd have any issue with expanding it or not, but it seems like not a real controversial issue. And I have no idea how many folks have these plates, for this particular designation. But I think it's a good thing to recognize our veterans and to do these kinds of things when we can.
Absolutely. And I think the senior center is a logical place for sure. Councilor Murphy-Ramboletti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I got a call from Councilor Tallman as well. I think my only question was if this is something that other municipalities are doing in our area, and if I agree with Councilor Bacon, I don't see this being controversial, or it shouldn't be, and I think it complements Councilor Tallman and I had passed something years ago that if a veteran has a veteran's license plate, like one of those ones from the state, then they can park in the in any municipal parking spots free of charge. And I don't know if that's been utilized. But I think it would complement it. In addition to the senior center, I could see this making sense at the library or, obviously the war memorial. But yeah, I'm definitely in favor of it. I think just moving it forward, that's our small part to get it to go to the next step. So I would definitely be in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, I wanted to name that in the context of other things the city has been doing in order to try to support veterans. I think allowing more access, allowing there to be ways to be recognized, like the parking spaces, like the not paying in the municipal parking lots, like the HERO Act that we looked at earlier this year around allowing there to be a greater exemption for taxes for veterans. I think all of these are really important actions for us to take. Councilor Devine, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do think this is a great idea. I don't know how many of you get up to Southampton to Tractor Supply. They have a beautiful parking space with this absolutely beautiful sign for veterans only. So certainly the next time I'm up there, I'll take a picture of it.
Yes,
It's
please
really,
do.
really beautiful. And I do think the senior center is probably the best place for this. But I will definitely take a picture in the next couple of days for you.
Thank you. I think also there could be some outreach where we ask folks where they would like to see parking space. So that's something that we could certainly do too.
And
whether
what
it's-
you want to make sure is that at some point in the future, we're not going to have a parking deck out behind City Hall.
Will you repeat that, Councilor?
I said, some point in the future, we probably may not have a parking lot in back of the City Hall. As you know, a lot of that we can't even park anymore.
Yes.
So just a little informational thing
Yes.
for you. But the, I'll get a picture taken of that for sure.
Thank you. Solicitor Bissonnette, is it possible that, here's my question, because we, of course, have the section, but we need to have it actually drafted into the language for a home rule petition. It doesn't strike me as something that would be particularly complicated, and I'm wondering if it would be possible to draft it fairly easily. And I'm wondering from the committee, do you want it to be brought back here for us to approve it, or do you want that home rule petition language sent to council for us to look at it there? Solicitor Bissonnette, if we could hear from you first.
Let me offer this thought, which I looked at quickly when Councilor Bartley first brought this up for City Hall parking. Whether or not it would be necessary to have a home rule petition for the city on its own initiative in an ordinance to designate certain parking spots at the library, at the senior center, any other places that the council might see fit. It is not a public street, it is a public parking lot that the council does control. And it seems to me that if we're able to provide free parking, we certainly can provide parking at those other designated spots with the municipal buildings. I don't think we could do it at the Ingleside Mall, for example, but certainly within the boundaries of the city's own property, I think it would be entirely appropriate. I'm not sure why this statute may have been felt necessary. I don't know if there's a problem in a specific instance in a city or town, but I would think that we'd be able to designate that on our own by an ordinance vote of the city council. I will check on that and report back whether home rule would actually.
Thank you. That's actually really good information. So that makes me think, however, that we might then want to table in committee and then get more information from Solicitor Bissonnette, whether that's information that we're allowed to change it in ordinance, in which we would not need to move a home rule petition forward, and just the ordinance committee will have to then draft that language. Or if there's a home rule petition, that would then be given to us as legal form. Councilor Bacon?
Yes, so I'd like to make a motion that we table this pending the determination as to whether a home rule petition is necessary. Understanding that if it is necessary, we wish to move forward with the home rule petition.
Is there a second?
Yeah, sorry, I was not unmuting myself.
No worries.
Second.
All right. And then if there's any further discussion, hearing none, roll call vote. Councilor Bacon?
Yes,
Councilor Murphy-Milletti?
Yes.
Councilor McGrath-Smith? Yes.
and then I guess a motion to adjourn is in order.
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you all. And thank you all to the counselors who attended. Thank you so much.